Hi, this is Pastor Dave. Welcome to Persistent Hope. Persistent hope exists to bring hope by finding practical ways to share and show the love of Jesus Christ. We're talking this week about God's eternity, and of course, when we talk about God, we're talking about Jesus Christ because Jesus Christ is God. Yes, he was born of a virgin. In fact, in Galatians chapter 4, it says, when the fullness of time came, God sent forth his son, made of a woman. So, yes, that's when his human life began. And there are times when Jesus talked about his humanity and spoke about himself in simple, humble, human terms. But his Father is God, which means he's never been born and he has no end. And when Jesus referred to his eternity as he walked the earth, he used phrases that absolutely shocked those listening. Yes, he came into the world to become a man, to experience everything we have experienced, and to show what it looks like to walk in a desire to live and serve the will of the Father. He once said about himself, before Abraham was, I am. The Bible invites us to come into a personal relationship with Jesus Christ and then allow him to work in our lives so we live more like Jesus and less like ourselves. Because he is eternal. And this life is a small story in a much bigger picture. In the book of Ecclesiastes, it says that God has put eternity into the heart of every person. That's why we have something within us that knows there's something more to life than this life. That's the reason why sometimes we can feel so claustrophobic. When we're young, life can't go fast enough. We want to get our license. We want to get married. We want to have a career. We want to have a child. And then as life begins to reach that halfway point, it seems like time speeds up and we want things to go slower. Life and time can seem so limiting, but that's because we were created for more than time has to offer. Now, this isn't like me as a preacher, but I'm going to cut my time a little short today. And I'm simply going to invite you to consider praying this. God, I give you my life, and I choose to live for your will. God, I give you my life, and I choose to live in your will. If you pray this, things on the outside may not change, and you'll still only get 24 hours a day, but you will find hope that is greater than your clock, your calendar, or your checkbook. God bless. There are so many prophecies about what would happen when Christ was to be born. And if you recall, like his place of birth that we can read about in Micah chapter 5, happens hundreds of years before he's born there. And someone once said, if you look at all the prophecies in the Old Testament about Christ's birth and his life and his death and how he died, the odds of those coming true would be better odds than if you took 50 decks of cards, went up in a plane, opened all those cards and threw them out the window. And they all would land back on Earth in perfect order, each card in the right order in each deck stack. Those odds are better than everything that was said about Christ coming true. Well, you know how everything that is said about Christ came through? Well, of course you do, because God directed those people to have that prophecy. But you know why? Because God's not under time. He's not under constraints. To him, 1,000 years is a day. And so that's a reminder to us, we serve a God that can give us a sense of tomorrow. Now, we're not all going to predict the future. We always have a crackpot predicting this or that. And by the way, I remember having a kid in my youth group. God told me I'm going to marry that guy. Well, she didn't marry that guy. Did God get it wrong? Or are we quick to say God is telling us stuff that we want? When the reality is, God, who's not limited by time, is going to be true. and His Word is going to be good, and His will is going to be perfect. Now, you know, when the Bible was written, it didn't have chapters and verses. Can I remind you? I've done this before. I've brought you to these verses, and honestly, the more you stay with me on YouTube, the more you're going to hear me come back to these foundational verses. Romans chapter 11 through chapter 12, which didn't have chapters or verses, was just a continuing thought. And it reminds us about the God of time and who we serve. Verse 33 of Romans 11, oh, the depth of the riches of the wisdom and knowledge of God. How unsearchable His judgment, and His paths beyond tracing out. Who has known the mind of the Lord, or who has been His counselor? Who has ever given to God that God should repay him? For from Him, and through Him, and to Him are all things. To Him be glory forever. Therefore, I urge you, brothers and sisters, in view of God's mercy, offer your bodies as living sacrifices, holy and pleasing to God. This is a spiritual act of worship. Don't conform to any longer to the pattern of this world. By the way, you know what the pattern of this world is? Time. Time is short. Live for the moment. Grab the gusto. Grab the weekend. Say yes to the girl. Go after that pleasure. Do what feels right. Follow your dreams. Don't conform any longer to the pattern of this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind. Then you will be able to test and approve of God's will, His good, pleasing, and perfect will. Live in time, but serve the one who has nothing to do with time. God bless.